help leaders to co-create the future, because today's challenges can't be solved with yesterday's thinking. Industry convergence, talent scarcity, AI everywhere. But the future isn't just about technology or trends, it's about mindsets and choices too. I call it the upside of disruption. Proactive, pro-learning, pro-people, and pro-growth. I wrote The Upside of Disruption because I feel that as humans, we crave the comfort of certainty. And this happened in my own life. I had my whole life mapped out in a very linear way. And then I was involved in a serious accident and I had to confront a lot of new realities. The biggest takeaway from my book is that we always overestimate the risk of doing something new, a new way of working, a new way of thinking, a new assumption about the world. But we always underestimate the risk of standing still. And I believe in this age of volatility, when today is the slowest it will ever be, not taking a risk is a risk. Change, it used to happen as a breeze. Now it feels like a Category 5 typhoon. Some of the big inflection points that I write about in the book and unpack include blurring of industry lines. Think about it. Your next competition could come from an industry, a vertical, completely different to yours in the next 5 years. We also have a geopolitical and tech super cycle converging together to redefine value creation, how we work, and the future of work. A third and final theme, which I find really interesting, is BMI. Not body mass index, bureaucratic misery indicator. What I mean by that is too many processes, too many protocols, too much bureaucracy, best practices that have become broken practices. For example, 1 in 3 meetings is considered a complete waste of time. We deal with over 30,000 emails a year on average, and that's growing at around 25% a year. And so the point is, we're drowning in information, we're drowning in bureaucracy, and that's a tax on agility, that's a tax on speed, that's a tax on innovation. So these are 2 or 3 really hyper-relevant themes that I think are keeping leaders around the world awake at night. One of the big takeaways from my book, The Upside of Disruption, is that questions are the answer. New realities, new contexts, ever-changing contexts demand new questions. If you stop for 4 minutes a day to think about new questions, that's 24 hours of new questions a year. And questions are like the golden key that can unlock the door and help you to see the world differently. What's the boldest question you're going to ask this quarter? What's the question you're going to ask that won't just make people feel good, but will make people think hard? In my book, I talk about 3 or 4 big catalytic questions. For example, how do we turn mega trends such as AI and biotech into milestones? What's the sweet spot between strategy, sustainability, and profitability? And how do we stay resilient when the only constant is change? One of the big human blind spots, institutional blind spots, is what I call the curse of sameness. That we're all using the same technology. We're all thinking the same way. We're all using the same strategies and the same consultants. And so, of course, the curse of sameness means that we're not asking new questions or different questions. We're asking the same questions as well and getting the same outcomes. And so a really important takeaway for leaders to think about is to go into a meeting and start with questions to a new challenge or an issue, an inflection point, but suspend answering them. Don't answer those questions for at least 15 minutes. Just explore the quality of the questions that are generative in nature. And then after the 15 minutes, come together collaboratively, pick 2 or 3 different questions that haven't been asked before that make you feel, that shift your framing, that shift your perspective. You know, there's a saying, a change of perspective is worth at least 80 IQ points. And asking new questions is a shortcut to that. couple of months ago, I was in San Francisco working with a client, and I decided to test a Waymo driverless car because as a keynote speaker at the intersection of AI and disruption and human sustainability, it's important to model curiosity as well, which I define as the gap between what we know and what we want to know. And of course, as we evolve and mature, often that gap gets smaller and smaller. So taking courage leaps into the future, experimenting is really important. So I ordered this driverless car, and as I stepped into it, a few other pedestrians were staring at me. I saw one mime, WTF, as I got into the car. And yes, it took courage to do that. And it was incredible how intuitive this driverless car was. And the point of the story was, I don't think this is the age of disruption. This is the age of wonder. This is the age of possibility. The future has already happened. Cars that can drive themselves, robots capable of everything from advanced manufacturing to complex surgery. The potential is limitless. We start to think about AI and reframe it differently. So I think we need a whole new narrative around how to harness AI, not just as an enabler, but as a way to augment return on intelligence and return on imagination. And for me, that's exciting and exhilarating. And it's an opportunity that we need to seize right now. Now is the time, now is the moment, now is the place to start having these debates and start experimenting in a really intentional and deliberate way. And when the future arrives faster than ever before, the questions that we ask, catalytic questions, matter more than ever. What are the bravest questions, the boldest questions you will ask this year? What are the questions that should be asked that are not being asked? This is a shortcut to future readiness and leading from the future, not the past. Leadership today is broken, and the numbers tell the story. Research at my think tank, Hat Future Lab, shows that 2 out of 3 teams say that they're overmanaged and under-led. 2 out of 3 people say they haven't received feedback in more than 6 weeks. And 2 out of 3 people say that they don't get to put their highest skills to work in their job. And that's crazy. So I wrote the book, The Upside of Disruption, to equip leaders of today and leaders of tomorrow with the mindsets, the tools, the strategies to harness uncertainty as a tailwind for laser-like focus, strategic courage, and value creation, but also not just to focus on profit maximization, but to prioritize human maximization in the age of AI and algorithm and possibility. What kept me awake at night in writing The Upside of Disruption was the importance of achieving clarity from complexity and moving from abstraction to action. And so in my book, there's not just calls to action, there's calls to reflection and calls to mobilization as well. Here are a few concrete examples. Number 1, good leaders learn, great leaders unlearn. In the book, I unpack practical tools to create a culture of humility, which I define as the curiosity to learn and the courage to unlearn. For example, once a quarter, going Marie Kondo. What I mean by that is, I worked with one client and they were drowning in data, drowning in bureaucracy, drowning in information, and it became a tax on speed and agility and future readiness. They were spending 90% of their cognitive bandwidth on bureaucratic work instead of intelligent work. And so by going Marie Kondo once a quarter or once a month, what I mean by that is implementing a reductionist mindset. Illumination, unlearning, is one of the finest forms of optimization. We have this brain bias against subtraction. We're addicted to adding complexity to complexity. And, a few examples, the US tax code has gone from 400,000 words to 4 million words in the last 10 years. At City Hall in San Francisco, it takes an average of 252 days to set up a first interview because they have a 1,000-page booklet of rules that kill agility. And I recently worked with a bank which had over 20,000 different job titles. So we need to adopt this reductionist mindset. And this is why I call it the upside of disruption. On the other side of disruption, complexity, constraints, budget constraints, headline wins, war in Ukraine, overlapping technology disruptions. But on the other side is this reductionist mindset, this ability to fight complexity, not with complexity, but with simplicity. And this is how we win the future and stay close to our customers and today's customers and tomorrow's customers. So what do we need to simplify? What do we need to eliminate? What do we need to automate or augment? What do we need to optimize? And so by this example, this story of unlearning, of going Marie Kondo, of simplification, what it released was energy, was strategic agility, was this ability to move fast as the speed as the customer, to learn at the speed of AI. And this is what we're trying to achieve here. In my book, I want to equip leaders with new mindsets that will future-proof them and help them to win the future in a sustainable way for the next 100 years and beyond. So I have a great partnership with MIT Solve. MIT Solve is an initiative at MIT, and its mission is to scale generations of solvers. The truth is today's challenges can't be solved with yesterday's thinking and yesterday's mindsets. And new contexts demand new ways of thinking. Is this scary? Yes, it is. Is this exciting? Yes, it is. MIT Solve's mission is to identify courageous thinkers and doers around the world with great scalable solutions to some of the biggest existential challenges we face as a species. For example, climate risk. For example, illiteracy. For example, urbanization. And so every year, MIT Solve holds an ideas festival where entrepreneurs and innovators are invited from around the world to pitch their ideas to some of the world's most urgent and pressing challenges. And the best pitches get investment to scale those solutions in a sustainable way. What I love about my involvement with MIT Solve is the opportunity to work with the next generation of thinkers and doers. It's a source of inspiration. For example, a young lady called Emma Yang, and her grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, a terrible disease. In fact, every 7 minutes, somebody is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, according to the World Health Organization. Emma Yang, being a very analytical person, decided to create an app called Timeless, which uses geotagging, facial recognition, AI, to help the grandmother stay connected to her memories. She's now received over $1 million worth of investment, and Timeless is going global. And this is what I'm talking about. This age of AI is an age of possibility. Imagine how much it would cost to scale an app 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Millions of dollars. Today, it can be done with a couple of $1,000s, and that cost is dropping to zero. In this age of possibility, the only limit will be your imagination. Disruption is such a negative word in so many ways, but actually I want to reframe this word disruption. When you think of the word disruption, it also means change, opportunity, possibility. Disruption can mean learning and growth. And the key point here is that disruption always comes packaged as risk and reward. Risk and reward travel in the same elevator. My point is, when this is the slowest it will ever be in our lifetime, this is when AI will be the slowest it will ever be in our lifetime. Disruption is the norm. Business models decaying faster, ways of working being replaced at light speed. And so if we don't adopt this kind of self-disruption mindset in a constructive way, really courage over comfort, curiosity over conformity. When you adopt this mindset of curiosity, which is a source code for self-disruption, what it means is we embrace ideas, we embrace possibilities that challenge the status quo. When we default to a conformity mindset or a comfort mindset, we inadvertently reject ideas that challenge the status quo. And that leads to inertia or stasis or stagnation. And so the point of the book is this is a source code for vitality, long-term vitality. It's a source code for long-term sustainability, not just sustainable business models, but sustainable work and sustainable opportunities. It's a great question and a great framing. And there's a backstory to this word, this concept of nutritional value. A couple of months ago, I attended a seminar that was led by Thomas Heatherwick, an industrial designer, famous for some great works, including the Vessel in Hudson's Yard and the Island near Chelsea in New York. And what was really interesting about Thomas Heatherwick's speech was he spoke about this idea of nutritional value. He said, when you're walking down the street and you look at buildings and you look up, how often do they make you feel good? How often did they give you nutritional value, this sense of well-being, that they add something to your day in a meaningful way, in a positive way? And of course, the truth is not very often. Buildings are the worst places to be innovative. That's why there's a saying by Steve Blank, the Stanford professor, get out of the building. Buildings are designed to make you tired and sleepy. Low ceilings, terrible lighting, terrible painting and decor. So run out of the building if you want to be innovative. But the point of the concept is that I kind of reframe this idea of nutritional value to leadership. I ask myself, how often as leaders do we create nutritional value? For example, we spend far too much time as leaders on transactional work in the week rather than transformational work. We spend far too much time in the week on checking rather than coaching. And we spend far too much time in the week on spreadsheets rather than AI-enabled self-analytics. So we have more time to focus on creating the future, innovating, and inventing the future, not just reacting to it. The research estimates that I'm working on show that 2 out of 3 people say they're overmanaged and underled. And this happened in my own life. Many years ago, I worked in consultancy and I had a boss whose nickname was the Shadow. I'd be working away. All of a sudden, he would slowly kind of creep behind me. The temperature in the room would drop. I'd feel this cold shiver down my spine. And then he would breathe in my ear and say, "What are you doing, Terence?" It was terrifying. He thought he was coaching, but he was checking. The number one reason why talent leaves the door after money is a lack of internal growth opportunity. And 83% of people say they believe that the competition or opportunities are better outside of the company that they're working in. We also know that the pandemic was an accelerant for many things, but also 2 out of 3 people are in continuous job search mode. 2 out of 3 people are rethinking their purpose, why they do what they do. And so nutritional value is a big deal because on the other side of disruption is opportunity and possibility to reject some of the always done ways that are broken and to start rethinking how can we create really healthy, human-led, AI-enabled cultures where we thrive and where we get ROI, not just return on investment, but return on intelligence and return on imagination. I think the war for talent is over. Talent won. We have talent scarcity, and one of the big questions leaders need to be thinking about, and I write about it in the book, The Upside of Disruption, is what's our reskilling and upskilling strategy? According to the World Economic Forum, over 66% of jobs will need high levels of reskilling or upskilling in the next 5 years. But only 23% of leaders and HR leaders say they have a clear, coherent reskilling and upskilling, cross-skilling strategy. Every organization needs to become a skills-based organization. What I mean by that is we need to think differently about how we hire and retain talent. Talent scarcity is going to cost the global economy over $15 trillion in lost GDP over the next decade. So we need to disrupt and reinvent how we retain our talent. And what I mean by that is internal job marketplaces, horizontal hiring, moving talent closer to projects and portfolios, and pixelating jobs. What I mean by that is pixelate every job, breaking down the job into smaller constituents to understand the elements that create value versus the elements that block value. If you do that with AI as the enabler and a platform, you're going to create an organization that has human superpower, but also you're going to retain your talent, which is a key way of outpacing the forces of disruption. Job disruption, technology disruption, workforce disruption. So talent reinvention is a really big part of the equation of the upside of disruption. We can't win the future, lead from the future without talent intelligence and really holding on to our A players. Money is the currency of transactions. Trust is the currency of future readiness. And what I mean by that is when trust is high, so ecosystems of trust, trust in people, trust in the marketplace, trust in tech, trust in talent, ideas travel faster and the costs and barriers and constraints go down. The opposite is true as well. When trust is low, cost goes up and speed goes down. The writer George Orwell of Animal Farm in 1984 would have loved these times. We have meme warfare. Cybercrime is going to cost the global economy over $11 trillion by 2027. And 10 out of 15 industries have suffered major trust breaches in the last 5 years. Every organization is at risk of operating at the edge of ethics. We've seen FTX, for example, Wirecard, Theranos, VW, Dieselgate, and many others that are still going to happen over the next 12 months. Trust is your North Star. Trust is the foundation of every transaction, interaction, relationship. And of course, with AI, what we need to avoid is artificial idiocy, artificial interactions, and artificial intimacy. So there's a kind of new play on the downsides or the risks of AI if we don't prioritize it ethically and responsibly alongside scale and growth and profitability. Some important questions for leaders to think about to scale and sustain and protect and prioritize trust alongside growth and alongside scale include: how do we ensure that trust and AI are aligned with the interests of our stakeholders? How do we prioritize trust so that it's ethically and responsibly baked into our culture? A culture of trust, not a culture of transaction. The future is still being written. We know that. Will AI be an enforcer, an enabler, or some type of dystopian golem mining us of our humanity? Will the future be disrupted or democratized, automated or augmented? It all starts with trust. So I think measuring trust, scaling trust, rewarding trust, celebrating trust in meaningful ways, in transparent ways is key. And the final observation, as part of my research on this trust equation, is that our customers on the outside and our talent on the inside want three things. They want truth, they want trust, and they want transparency. And if you can prioritize those as a leader, truth, trust, and transparency, you'll be in the top 5% of high-performing organizations, pro-resilient, proactive, pro-courage, but also you have a better chance of creating a longer-term vitality, a sustainable business model that can weather the disruptive storms that are coming down the line. The DARE Leadership Test is a central part of the Upside of Disruption, my new book. And what it does is unlock billion-dollar mindsets. What I mean by that is, what are our billion-dollar beliefs, our billion-dollar mindsets? That's defined as a clear-eyed conviction. For example, sustainability, decarbonization, AI, customer centricity. These are billion-dollar beliefs and billion-dollar mindsets. And when you prioritize them and bring them to life in a visible and visceral way, that gives you an edge. A big point of the book, my book, The Upside of Disruption, is this is not just about the individual. It's about we, not me. It's about collective intelligence, collective mindsets, cross-pollination. That's the best way to outpace the forces of disruption and to lead the future in an inclusive, responsible, ethical way. This is not about hero leadership or hero worship. This is about how do we scale these leadership behaviors horizontally and vertically so everybody is leading themselves. That's the way that I envisage the future of leadership. So the DARE model stands for 1, data, leading at the speed of AI and leading with AI as a co-strategist, a co-pilot, a co-creator. Number 2 is agility. And what I mean by that is unlearning. Good leaders learn, but great leaders unlearn. Every organization talks about agility, and the word agile is mentioned 1,000 times a quarter in earnings calls. But only 18% of organizations, according to Hack the Future, say that they are fully agile. Growth creates complexity, but complexity kills growth. And so unlearning, rejecting some of the old ways of doing, old bureaucracy, routine ways of working, meetings that no longer function, creates new energy, new bandwidth, new strategic readiness. So number 2 is agility. Number 3 is risk. Not taking a risk is a risk. And finally, number 4 of the DARE framework is evolution. What I mean by that is embracing continuous perpetual evolution. One of the words I love is henka. It takes its inspiration from nature. It's a Japanese word, and it means perpetual state of beta, learning for today, reimagining for tomorrow. And that's what E stands for in the DARE framework, evolution, embracing this perpetual state of humility and evolution. What a great way to stay future ready. Playing to strengths is a big deal. My research at Hack Future Lab and also for the book, The Upside of Disruption, shows that on average across every vertical, every industry, around 80% of revenue and future revenue comes from the core. So that's important. Protecting the core, optimizing the core, raising the efficiency of the core. Number 2, though, is moving into adjacent markets. And that's around 16% of revenue, current revenue or future revenue. So we've got the core, we've got adjacent, and then the final source of growth is breakthrough. New projects, new profit pools, new business models. And so that also creates an innovator's dilemma that we can end up over-allocating attention, resources, time, budget to today's business model at the expense of tomorrow's business model. I would suggest 3 strategies. Number 1, ask yourself the question, in the last 12 months, what new business models, new platforms, new customers have we created? And the key metric would be revenue outside of the core. Number 2 would be, how have we adapted our core to embrace new regulations, new markets, new customers, new technologies that we can leverage as a tailwind for value creation and sustainable growth? That's number 2. And then finally, number 3 would be, what are we unlearning in order to learn at the speed of tomorrow's customers? Because we're drowning in bureaucracy. The average organization, the average industry has a bureaucratic score, excess bureaucratic score of 76%. And that's just too high. And bureaucracy is actually going up. We're using over 4 million pieces of paper a day. And most organizations say that they want to be agile, but they're not, they're bureaucratic. So these are a handful of practical, future-focused questions for leaders to think about in terms of innovating the core and protecting the core, but also having the eye on the future and bringing the future to the present in a way that creates new growth engines and new profit streams. I love this question for obvious reasons. Well, first of all, thank you for the conversation, Speakers Associates. It's been an absolute joy and an honor to have this conversation with you. You can reach out to Speakers Associates for speaker bookings, including masterclasses, workshops, roundtables as well. And then in terms of my book, The Upside of Disruption, it's coming out on September the 4th. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, 2 of the main websites where people can get the book. And of course, reaching out to me directly on LinkedIn at Terence Mauri as well is a great way to become part of my community, where I'm always sharing new insights, new research on how to harness disruption as a tailwind for learning and growth and reimagination.